Hey everyone, welcome to It Tastes Different Gaming Appetizers. On this episode, Ubisoft, they're at it again. Oh, those crazy people are always doing crazy things. What are they up to this time? So on September 1st, it's coming up, Ubisoft will be shutting off online services for 15 different games from its back catalog. This will make multiplayer inaccessible on these titles, and it will also remove the ability for players to play the DLC for a couple of their games. So even if the player has purchased the DLC, they will no longer be able to play the content included in it. So Ubisoft, I think they announced this a while back that they were going to be delisting some of their games, and we didn't quite know the full extent of that. So basically, they're delisting not a whole bunch of games. Like I said, there's only 15 games there, but those 15 games are Anno 2070 on PC, Assassin's Creed 2, Assassin's Creed 3, Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, Assassin's Creed Liberation, Assassin's Creed Revelations, Driver San Francisco, Far Cry 3, Ghost Recon Future Soldier, Prince of Persia: The Forgotten Sands, Rayman Legends, Silent Hunter 5, Space Junkies, Splinter Cell, Blacklist, and Zombie U. A lot of these games you'll still be able to download. You won't be able to play multiplayer, but you'll still be able to download if you purchased them before. But certain games, such as Far Cry 3, you will not be able to access the DLC. The DLC will become unavailable. You will not be able to install or access that DLC, which is... this is a big problem for game preservation, right? We've talked about game preservation before, and while these games, you'll still be able to download them, that DLC, that money you spent for that extra content, in this case, will not be able to be accessed. And that's a problem, right? If companies are going to go around and sell you these DLCs, if microtransactions are so important to them, they need to sell you this extra content, then that extra content needs to be available till the end of time, right? Of course, we know that's not super realistic, but hopefully it is, right? Hopefully they can make some way of making it available, even by migrating it to some other type of server or something like that, some other kind of storage or archive where you'll be able to access this stuff. But to just full out say, oh, remember that DLC you bought for Far Cry 3 or some of the other games that are losing their DLC, I think Driver San Francisco is also losing its ability to download DLC for it that you may have purchased for the game. That's just going to be completely gone. So that's a huge hit to game preservation, and I'm not surprised that Ubisoft wouldn't have possibly delisted these to the point where you couldn't even download them. Right when this article first came out, that was what everyone thought Ubisoft was saying. Ubisoft had to retract and say, no, we're not saying that. We're just saying like you won't be able to download them. But it was the assumption from what they were saying at first that they were basically delisting these games, or even if you had purchased the game itself, you couldn't download it. Was that the case to begin with? We don't honestly know. It could be that they got backlash and decided, we better not do that. But or it could be that it was just misinformation. Misquoted or something like that. But again, this could be a huge hit to game preservation, especially with these DLCs not being accessible, and what game companies will do in the future with older games where, you download or buy that digital game and one day the company decides, we're done hosting it, and into the ether it goes, right? So let's go around and see what everybody thinks of this. Pat, what do you think of Ubisoft doing crazy things?
Basically, in my opinion, this is reasons why you should not buy DLC, right? Even though they're keeping the original game around, you can't get the DLC unless you had the remaster or whatever. It came part as a remaster or something, which there's a few games on the list that had remastered DLCs, but the vast majority of that list that had DLC, it goes bye-bye. To me, that's really bad. I mean, first of all, being able to lose access to a digital copy of a game you sold is a major defeating point for digital games, in my opinion. We've talked about this many times, and companies like, oh no, you'll always be able to have access to this. Ubisoft's just the first idiot out of the box to say, yeah, they're I shouldn't say they're the first out of the box to test the waters on how gamers are going to react to losing access to their favorite thing. They're just the first company they're not the first, but they are one of the bigger companies out there that's willing to take the stance and say, what's going to happen if we delist these? Which is why I think the initial plan was to just delist all of them and never make them available. And then everybody's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Hold on. In my opinion, there should be some lawsuits for this, right? I paid for this and I can no longer get access to it. I should have some rights as a consumer to digital things that I've bought. If, and it's a tough call, right? I mean, we've all played online only games that have gone to the wayside. I mean, the biggest one from back when I was younger was Star Wars Galaxies, right? That game went to the wayside when SOE shut it down back in the day. And fans brought it back alive, and there's some third-party servers and stuff out there for it. But stuff like that to me makes sense to some extent, right? It's an online-only game. When they shutter the services, I know I'm going to lose access to it. But when I buy a single-player game, I should always have access to it. Always. Forever. If you're going to sell me digital and you want me to purchase digital, you need to make sure it's available for me until, like Nick said, the end of time. Meteor crashes, the earth implodes, whatever. Have that stuff on a server. As unrealistic as it sounds, it's realistic. That there are plenty of games today that don't come out in physical. You can only get it digital. So then what happens? What happens when Steam decides to say the same thing? We're delisting a bunch of stuff we can no longer afford to host. What then? I mean, think of this stuff. I mean, that to me worries me. And I am anti DLC. I hate DLC. It's the worst thing ever to come out of video games until these NFTs and crap like this. But because we used to get a full game, and then sometimes you would get this cool expansion would add a lot of extra content. Now instead, I still love the cheeseburger reference. You get the meat. And then if you want the bun, the lettuce, and the tomato, and the cheese, and the onions, and the soda, and the fries, those are all DLC. That's how I feel like video games are built these days. They're not built complete. They're like, we built the game complete, but we're going to sell it to you piecemeal. And we're going to call these extra pieces DLC. So that's why I've hated the whole DLC thing from the word get-go. And to me, this is just putting a nail in the DLC coffin right here. If they're going to say, I can still have access to the base game, but not all the extra content that I paid for. Ubisoft has got some huge backlash, I think. I would hope that people are actually out there putting together a class action lawsuit against Ubisoft. All these people who bought this stuff and they're losing access, I think you need to get a lawyer. Put a class action lawsuit against Ubisoft for taking away your ability to access and download digital content that you paid for. DLC is part of the game. They put it out as part of the game. I should have access to it. But that's just my opinion. It really does make me double think, why am I buying digital? Because this is just a sign of things to come. Everything is moving digital. So at some point, it's going to happen to more and more and more and more. And the things that we love to play, that we have in our Xbox library, our PlayStation library, Switch library, or Steam or Epic or whatever library you have your games in, can just all go away at a set time. Spells bad news for game preservation. Shane, what do you think, man?
Oh, I love it. That's sarcasm as hell. It's ridiculous. I mean, that's the problem with digital is you're renting. It's BS, but I mean, it's the way it is. You know, when you start up a new game and you got that big long list of crap you got to read through, and then you have to click next or yes to be able to play the game, right there in that text is somewhere saying, screw you, you're not going to play this thing when I'm done with it. And that's what they've done. They were able to say, hey, buy this, great, but when we're tired of supporting it, you're done. You're finished. You won't get it back. It should be illegal. I don't, I know digital is really, especially on consoles, fairly a new thing in the last, 10 years. But it's ridiculous that they can get away with it. I mean, they should, they should be given it. They should. One, I don't understand why the base game can be downloaded and kept, but the DLC that you purchase cannot. I mean, if the DLC is purely multiplayer of some sort, like that I could understand. But if I buy the DLC for a story portion of the game, why can't I download it? Because once you download it, that is yours. So, I mean, Ubisoft should be able to say, hey, it's yours now. So if you delete it from your hard drive, that's your fault. I mean, you could have transferred it, put it onto a portable or whatever for use another day. But, once you download it, hey, it is yours now. You're responsible. But that's not what they're doing. They're saying, you paid me to purchase this game, but we're going to turn it into a rent that you're giving up on. And that's all it was. It was a $20 rent for what, 10 years, 15 years for Far Cry 3. So it's kind of inevitable with digital, like you were saying. The problem is it's wrong. It's just wrong. I mean, it really is. It's just on a moral standpoint, I pay for something, it is mine. I should not have it taken away because you could not find a way to let me keep it after I paid you for it. That's on them, in my opinion. And I agree, a lawsuit should be filed. But if people are clicking yes to go actually pay the game after and not reading all that, then in there they're going to be clearly saying, hey, one day you're not going to have access to this. So, take a hike, catch a bus, fluff off. I mean, that's what they're going to tell the judge. And the judge is going to be like, did you guys read your, warning crap at the beginning of the game? Most people don't. I mean, I can't handle reading all of it. I see the part where it says, do you, and then click here. That's all the crap in the middle. And that's on me. I don't read it. That's on me. And that's on you guys too, for if you don't read it. So it's BS. It's bullcrap. It's wrong. It's immoral. There's so many things I could say about it. But at the end of the day, who's going to have more power in a court? If you were to say, hey, I bought this. And Ubisoft says, well, no, you rented it because you clicked this button where it said you agreed with our terms of service. But I think that's a scam. And those terms of service things are a real problem, especially in the gaming community. So, but I think Ubisoft should be kicked in the balls. I think if you're still playing Far Cry 3 anyways, you really probably might try 4 or 5 or anything new. So, but that's just me. But Far Cry 3 is a great game. It just sucks that you paid that money for it. So, yay. And I agree. Game preservation, this makes it even more of an important thing for the gaming community. So, what about you, Nick?
Yeah. I agree. I mean, it really sucks, and this does open the door for other companies to possibly follow suit, depending on how this goes, especially with older titles. We don't need to support these. We don't need to have servers for these, so we can save that money and save that space for other things and just get rid of these titles, especially if there's not much of a pushback or any sort of legal action and various things like that. They'll do really old titles, sure, but, there's still people that probably play Far Cry 3 and these other games and Anno 2070 and stuff like that. There's people that really love those games and they go back to them often. So I'm not sure what the DLC of these particular games include, right? Shane might be correct. These might be all multiplayer only DLCs. So it makes sense since the multiplayer options are not going to be available. Online multiplayer, right? Local multiplayer, if it has a local multiplayer option, you'd still be able to do that. But any sort of online multiplayer option is gone. So it depends on what the DLC entails for these various games. But it still sucks. And it still shouldn't be there's no reason for Ubisoft to delist these games. I wouldn't think, other than just not wanting to, host them anymore on their side, right? Or something to that effect. I can understand getting rid of the multiplayer, not having multiplayer servers up for them, but why couldn't you still sell the product, right? They can still download the product if they owned it before, but why can't you still sell the product, right? Just put a disclaimer and say that like multiplayer function is no longer there for it, but you can still buy Far Cry 3, or you could still buy Anno 2070 or Driver San Francisco or whatever. You just can't play it online. And I think if most people see that, a little disclaimer says, "Hey, online functionality is gone," and they'll be like, "All right, that's fine. I just want to play the single player or the the offline portion of it. I'm cool with that," and they can go and purchase it. So, but yeah, it's the biggest thing is game preservation, right? And Patrick's right. That does worry me about all the digital games that I own. I have a big physical collection, and I'm happy that I do, right? And I still continue to get games in physical form, mainly because my main reason is I like the box and I like all that stuff. But when you think about, when you think about game preservation, that's also a good reason to go out maybe when you find like certain games, maybe bought it digitally or something like that you might find on sale for super cheap, to maybe pick them up in a physical form, especially if the ones that you really like, and put them on your shelf. So that way, if they do disappear one day, you can pop them into your, Xbox or PlayStation or whatever, and be able to play them and not have to worry about the servers being available for you to purchase or download even these games, right? So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the future with all these older digital titles. You do have some great companies out there like CD Projekt Red with Good Old Games that are bringing back older PC titles and putting them out, redoing them so they play on a Windows 10 or Windows 7 device or PC, and be able to play them on there. And these really old titles that, aren't around anymore that you can't go to Steam and buy. Right. So it's really awesome to be able to go on there. But again, that's digital, right? You're not getting a CD in the mail. And I would agree with Shane. Like if they had the ability, if they're going to delist something completely, right? In this case, allow the users to download it. Allow the users to download the actual files for said program onto their PCs and have it in their storage, right? I kind of feel that way for all digital games, right? Because it almost is like a renting system, right? You don't physically own the game, and you don't physically own the game in two ways, right? One is a physical hold in your hand type of thing. The other thing is you can't download them onto some sort of media, right? So you don't own the files for that game to run outside of being able to play it through the Xbox or through the PS5 or on your PC or anything like that, right? You can download a Steam game, you download a Steam game on your computer, but you still have to use Steam to play it, right? And so it needs that in order to function. You're not just double clicking on the it still goes through Steam, so you're not really double clicking on the icon and playing it. But if you're going to delist them, I understand why they don't do that. But if you're going to delist them forever, then have some sort of opportunity for them to be downloaded, or maybe put out there and see if somebody wants to host them, right? Like some company wants to go host these files for download, right? That I bet you if Ubisoft asked out just for free, like not saying they're going to pay the company or whatever, or the company's looking for money from Ubisoft for maintenance or anything, just saying like, hey, we're going to delist these unless some company wants to host these. And I bet you would find some company that would go, yeah, we'll host them, and we'll host them in our server. You don't need to pay us or anything. We'll do everything. We'll just host them on our side. And they'd be like, okay, cool. Here you go. Host them for us. You can go, if you want your games, you can go, everything's going to transfer over to here. You can go to this, where their server is, and download your games from there, or whatever the case may be. Or you can go and purchase them from them. Maybe they'll get the money for it. Maybe that's where Ubisoft, because at this point, Ubisoft's not making any money on them anymore. So why not give them to someone else to host at that point? But I don't know the legality of that. That might be more of a legal type thing or something like that. But you're exactly right, Shane. The legal disclaimer at the beginning of the games are probably somewhere in that mumbo jumbo of legal crap is telling us that you don't actually own jack. Right. And we can do whatever we'd like to do. So a class action lawsuit could potentially win in court. I could see that. It just depends. If we get enough people to sign on to something like that, people could take them to court for something like that. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah. It's just.
Yeah. Unfortunately, though, they probably won't. Nobody can because they've got more lawyers, money. But really, the more you look into digital, the worse it seems in situations like this, right? I mean, you're basically paying you're paying for a license usage, if you will, until they decide that they no longer want to support that license. Which is not the way it should work, right? I mean, most things you pay for a license in the world, you have that license forever, and if you want to gain access to it, you usually have a typical access to it in the software world. But in the gaming world, it's not the same, right? You're like, I am paying for a usage license until the company decides they don't want to support it anymore, which is just, I don't get it. It's really starting to seem like not the best idea to buy games in digital anymore. And if gamers start to get scared of digital, like the stuff that they love to play is no longer going to be available, that will spell the downfall of things like of just any digital store like Steam and Microsoft stuff and Ubisoft, or not Ubisoft, but Epic and PlayStation. I mean, why would I buy digital games from them anymore if at any point within what they would consider a reasonable timeline, the game could just go away because they don't want to host it anymore or pay to maintain it? Could you imagine your Steam library going bye-bye because Steam's like, any game that's over 20 years old, we don't want to host it anymore. It's going to go, we're going to delist it on our site. You will not be able to gain access to it. Oh, I'd be mad. I have old games. I have a massive Steam library. I'm not as big as Nick's Steam library by any means, but I would be mad.
But
and not even really because what's that?
You know what will cause all that though? You. Because you are the kind of gamer that doesn't play old games. So your Steam library, you may have 1,000 games, but are you going to go back and play your game? And this is the mentality that a lot of these companies are using, probably Ubisoft. All right, this game is 10 years old. People aren't playing old games now, 10-year-old games. I mean, you say it all the time. It's old, it's outdated. The graphics aren't where the new stuff is. And I think that's one reason people look at it. And I apologize for interrupting, but I mean, I go back and I will play old games. Nick lives in old games. So, that's just the mentality of if it's 10 years old.
So it's all your fault,
it.
Patrick.
Damn it, Pat. God.
Well, got to start buying physical, guys. Got to start buying. But that doesn't matter anymore neither, right? Because a physical disc game anymore is not a complete game. It's not like buying an old cart. It's what you buy now. Anything physical is not the complete game. You can't even play it. Hell, by the time you buy a brand new game released on Xbox or PlayStation or Switch or even your computer, as soon as you pop that disc in, it's like, hey, there's an update. You need to go download that before you can play. And you're like, really? Didn't this just come out today? Those day one patches. Every game is a day one patch anymore. But it is what it is in that front. And even buying physical doesn't protect you anymore, unfortunately.
Nope. DRM, always online crap. I mean, even these single player games on disc, you have to be connected to the internet anymore. It sucks.
It's because when you pop in the disc recognizes that they don't own your soul yet. So they're like, hey, you need to download this real quick. All right. And now we have you.
Thanks for your soul. Keep on playing.
Thanks for your soul. Keep playing. Yeah. It's crazy. But, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens in the future and where this all leads. So, hopefully not the bad way. I mean, the digital is nice and convenient. I do love a physical collection, but digital is convenient. I don't have to go to the store. I don't have to have something shipped to me. I don't have to browse online and find the best deal. I can just go on the store and purchase it and play it right then and there. Right. 2 seconds later, I'm playing a game. Right. Well, I still got to download it, but the internet's pretty fast, so it doesn't take too long. But it's convenience over preservation. So it's double-edged sword. I admit a lot of mixture of both. I like to keep physical, but sometimes it's just more convenient to buy a game digital, right? And like Pat said, a lot of games are just digital, right? There is no physical release for them, unless you have like limited run or something like that does something where they do a physical release for it or something. But
even that physical game's not complete, right?
Yeah, exactly. Some of those games are just just the ability to the license basically on the disc to download it, right? And so it still downloads the entire game off the internet. And you're just that's all you're buying, right? And they had some of those. Rental. What was it? They had some of those like Switch games or something like that. The physical editions just came with a paper inside for the code for the game online, right? So that you don't see a lot of that happening anymore. I think that was a pretty bad taste for a lot of people and a lot of companies. Maybe not.
I mean, it still does. Look at a lot of collector's editions that come with Steelbook, and it's just an empty case without a game and a digital copy. I'm like, what the hell? Come on, guys. I bought a Steelbook. I want the game to be in here. There's a spot for it. When you open up the Steelbook, there's this little hole where the game's supposed to be, and you're like, where's my game? It was
like, was it Horizon Forbidden West, right? Yep. I think that edition you bought, the regular, didn't come with the game. Right, it came with the Steelbook and the statue and everything like that, but no game.
And the Steelbook was empty, no game.
Yeah, and it was like however much, like $200-$300 or whatever.
Yep.
And you don't get the game. Like the extra stuff's cool. I mean, the statue is really awesome, but it sucks that it doesn't come with the game.
Yeah, right, I can stare at her figure, but I can't play her on a damn TV. Awesome.
Yeah, but the statue is cool though. So anyway, do we have anything else we want to talk about with this? Anything you guys? No? All right. Well, thanks everybody for listening. Make sure you write us in the comments and let us know what you think of Ubisoft's decision to delist these games and the DLC for some of these games. How does that make you feel? What do you think about that? What do you think about the future of digital products? And, what might happen in the future with digital games? Do you see it continuing on and this is just a fluke, or do you see more companies kind of following suit with their really older titles? So just let us know down in the comments, and make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed. What are you waiting for? Go ahead and hit the subscription button. If you made it this far, you might as well subscribe, and also hit the bell notification to keep up to date with new videos that we do all the time. And we'll see you next time.
See ya.